ARE Podcast, episode number 15.
Welcome to the ARE Podcast. Where it's all about encouraging and inspiring you today so you can fulfill your dream of becoming a licensed architect tomorrow. And now your host. He was called Pumpkin by his dad when he was a boy, David Doucette.
Hello, and welcome back to episode number 15 of the ARE Podcast. We're really cranking these out now, joined by my co-host, Eric Corey-Freed.
Hello.
For those of you who are watching us on YouTube or the video, you can see he's up in Portland, and he doesn't have a shade on his office, so he's got that white artistic, album cover light. Because you guys don't have shades up there, right? You want the sun to come in.
We try to welcome the sun in Portland as much as possible. So
you're sun worshippers.
Yes.
All right. So today's topic, a really good topic actually. 10 ways to become a more valuable employee, and I have 5, and Eric has 5, and we're going to discuss those. And based on our sort of experience over the years of both being an employee and realizing what our bosses liked, and being employers and realizing what we didn't like about our employees. So a pretty good list here, and I guess none of them specific to like being the best CAD drafter or being the best designer, right? They're more general.
Yeah, well, everybody already thinks they're the best CAD drafter anyway, right? So that's part of the problem.
Are you saying the architects have egos? Is that what you're implying?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if you were to ask everybody in the office who's the best one on AutoCAD, everybody would raise their hand.
That is true. All right, let's start our list here with number 1, and I'm going to pull it from my list. And this one is to be a good writer. So number 1 tip is if you want to be a more valuable employee, be a good writer. And this might sound obvious, but it's not. We've talked in the past about the power of the cover letter. And I remember when I was in architecture school, I was always a good writer in high school. And I think just most of my friends just were a small high school. Like it just seemed to me, I grew up thinking like people could write. Then I got to architecture school in Boston and found out that wasn't the case. And it seemed to be architecture students in particular had difficulty with writing, with spelling, and we had to do, papers for theory class about, is a door a window, all this weird stuff. And I was the guy who was always editing everybody's stuff. And I was really struck by some of the poor writing skills that these architecture students, like my friends in architecture school, had. So not everybody is a good writer. It needs to be learned. And it's certainly a way to stand out from the crowd.
Well, what's funny about that is that I think there's this tendency that as you get smarter or more educated or older, that your writing should get more complex. And the exact opposite is true. Really, the best skill that you can learn not only is being a good writer, but being able to communicate big, complex ideas in a simple way.
That's a really good point, especially as architecture students. We do try to make things over complex and put in big words there. And I think you're absolutely right. As we get older, we try and be clearer because we're communicating with a bunch of people, and we're communicating oftentimes with non-architects. So if we're just speaking our own language, clients aren't going to necessarily understand what the heck it is we're saying.
Well, how many times have you met I'm thinking of a real person right now, but I won't say his name. And he probably writes and speaks at a graduate school level.
Right.
It's very impressive, but it's also incredibly confusing. It's hard to follow him. The truth is that most people, even though they might have a master's degree, in truth, and New York Times did a story about this just last month. In truth, that means that you should be writing at probably an 8th grade level. And if they only graduated high school, you should probably be writing at a 5th or 6th grade level.
Right.
The truth is, if you have the ability to take complex ideas and sell them or communicate them in a very simple way that anybody can understand them, that's the skill you need to learn, not how many more big words can I shove in this. And how many times have we picked up an architecture book and you're like, I don't know what the heck he's talking about.
Oh, totally. And I even see those articles every now and then, on some of the architecture blogs, and you just start reading it, and you're like, this is not making sense to me. I understand it, but it's just not making sense. But I also think with being a good writer is just spelling correctly. And I used to be a really good speller. I'm less so now, so I have to work a little harder at it. And I think it's just because of texting and sort of the way we just crank out stuff. We're just not as careful. And I see it in articles I read all the time. I use Flipboard. Every time I'm on there, at least once or twice a week, I see misspellings in articles that, like the New York Times and these magazines are writing, because everyone's just doing it so fast now. Okay, so that's number one, being a good writer. I love your point about keeping it simple, and especially as architects, we're not just talking to each other. We have to talk to the general public. We have to talk to agencies. We have to talk to people that understand us, and that's definitely a way to stand out from the crowd. Because if you're listening in your office right now, if you look around your office, not everybody in your office you're looking at right now is a good writer. So take note of that. All right, let's throw number 2 to your list. What do you have?
All right, this one is one of my favorites, and I actually have this written up on a whiteboard in my office right now, so the staff can see it. And it essentially is, don't present problems, present solutions. And what this means is
say that one more time.
Don't present problems, present solutions.
Okay.
And the idea is basically simple. There's always going to be problems. There's always going to be things that come up, right? That's to be expected.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is, don't just come to me and say, oh, we forgot a detail on the bathroom partition. Instead, come to me and say, we forgot a detail on the bathroom partition, but I think I have a way to fix it.
Yes, you are 100% right. And I think it's important. It's important for, I guess, architecture or architect interns, people new to the field, that we as employers, just like you said, Eric, we expect problems. Problems are going to come up all the time. We expect it. The issue is, well, how do we deal with it? And just like you said, being proactive, going to your boss and say, hey, we have this problem, but here's a solution. I think that's perfect. And I do that actually with my kids all the time. They're like, they tell me there's a problem. I go, okay, well, how are you going to fix it? Right. And then they give you that blank look for a second, but then they figure out how to fix it. And that's what you want. You want problem solvers.
Well, I remember very early in my career, it was probably my first job out of school, and my boss at the time said, there is no such thing as a perfect set of drawings.
Right.
Right. And it was like, what do you mean?
Right.
This is architecture. What do you mean it's not And he said, are you kidding? And then you see the process. Yeah, we submit stuff. We forget. Oh, we forgot to install a smoke detector here. We forgot to list a fire extinguisher there. And then the permit people come back with corrections, right? Things that they picked up on. And then we submit them. It's part of the process. So, if you come to me and say, listen, I don't know how to do waterproofing on this detail, well, then you're just adding to my burden. But if you come to me and say, listen, I don't know how to do waterproofing on my detail, but I've pulled together other details we've done in the past, it also then becomes a learning opportunity for the intern to then sit side by side with the principal and then map it out. So you're being helpful. Yeah,
that's a good point too, because we as employers, we don't want more burdens. We don't want our employees to be a burden on us. So you're exactly right. And I don't expect, people with a couple of years of experience to have waterproofing detail experience. So I expect them to come to me for help, but I like what you're saying is they come, I don't know how to do this waterproofing detail, but here's like 5 details I found in our library, or here's one I drew up. Can you take a look at it? So then it's something for me to react to.
Right.
And then it's a conversation, and you're right. It's a teaching tool rather than just coming to me empty-handed saying, I don't know how to do a waterproofing detail. And that's part of just being proactive. So I think that's a great one. So number 2, don't present problems, present solutions. Number 3, we'll go back to my list, is asking questions and the ability to ask questions. And it can be tricky because you certainly want to ask questions, but again, you don't want to be a burden, right, to your employer. So don't ask the obvious questions, or don't ask questions that you can find the answer to. Kind of save the questions that you're going to ask. Like, it's almost like golden tickets. You got to be careful with how you use them.
I love this one, and I always get suspicious when they don't have questions.
Yes.
My panic button go like we go over some big thing. Okay, this is what you're going to do for the week, and then they have 0 questions. Then right. That is alarming to me. And more to the point, I love it when because I do this with everybody else too. If I have questions, I might save them up, knowing, okay, we're going to meet this afternoon anyway. Instead of interrupting you 3 times throughout the day, I'll save them up for the meeting later on. But they're written down, and I'm prepared.
Unlike I do when I just have a thought, I text you rather than just saving them up and sending them to you all at once, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But that is a good point. And I think you're absolutely right. And we talked about this too, about interviewing. And not, how you have to have questions when you interview. But like you're saying, if you sit down with an employer and you have, say, a 20-minute meeting of you explaining something that they're going to do, if they don't have any questions, that's a problem, because you're thinking like, well, do they understand what we just talked about? Like, you expect them to have questions, and here's your opportunity to ask questions, And we as employers, we do want questions. We want, after we meet with you, we want it to be crystal clear to you. And we can only know that by you communicating with us. Because right. If you don't ask questions, we assume you understand it. And that's not often the case.
Well, also on top of that, remember, questions also should arise, right? So there's certain questions that you could almost ask every time you're given an assignment or a task, such as, when is it due? What are your expectations for it? How much time have you budgeted for me to spend on it? Right? Those are 3 basic questions that should go up in every design firm for anything you're given. And if you're not asking those questions, then I'm panicked, right? Because there oftentimes the principal will forget to say, by the way, don't spend more than 8 hours on it, or don't spend more than an hour on it.
Right.
And so you asking back shows that you care about the office. You care about bigger issues such as management.
Right.
Right. Oftentimes, and I've seen this with first year, kids right out of school, they will spend a ton of time on something because they want to do it the best job they can, and only to come to me and say, look, I spent 12 hours on this. It's like, oh my God, are you serious? You should just whip this up in three and been done with it.
And that's a good point. And part of that is, I think, as you're right, as the employer isn't always going to remember that detail. To say, hey, can you just knock this out in the next 2 hours? And I've been there too, where I've spent 2 days on something that, come to find out, they just wanted me to spend a couple hours on, and they wanted the level of detail they wanted done was a couple hours of detail. Like, that's all they needed. They didn't need 12 hours of work on this detail. And that's something that can save, money and time and all that. And that's just really, us communicating with our employers. So the responsibility is really on us to ask questions. And I think, I know, younger in my career, you're a little nervous to ask questions because you don't want to make it seem like you don't know, right? Because we're young, we're in architecture school, we know everything, right? So we don't want to lead on to our boss that we might not know. But the boss knows, we don't know much, and questions are, expected.
Exactly.
All right, so that was number 3, asking questions. Let's throw number 4 to you. What do you got?
Make everything an opportunity. And here's what I mean by that. Client calls, we're slashing the budget by $200,000. That shouldn't be seen as a negative. It should be seen as a challenge. It should be seen as an opportunity. Okay, well then how do we revamp the design, right? Contractor calls and says, there's a 8-week delay on these windows. We haven't framed them yet. Well, maybe that's an opportunity to redesign the windows that you didn't get enough time to do in the first place. everything is an opportunity. It's, when it presents itself, an opportunity to make the design better, to possibly improve it for the client, or maybe even save money, because there's never enough time for everything we want to do. So every little thing maybe is a chance for us to fix it or improve it.
I like that idea as well. It's also the, there's no problems, only opportunities, or only solutions, that same kind of thought. But as an employer, it goes back to not presenting problems, presenting solutions. It's that same kind of idea. We have a problem. We could freak out, or we'd be, okay, now it's an opportunity. Let's see how we can address this. And again, it goes back to being a problem solver. And not everybody in the office has this skill. And I would say majority of people don't have this skill.
But it can be learned. That's the beauty of it.
It's a skill. It can be learned. It is a skill. It can be learned. And if you look around at sort of, I guess, the more successful people in an office, or the ones who are working on bigger projects, it's probably because they're pretty good at these skills.
Exactly.
All right. So that was number 4, making everything an opportunity. Number 5 is an easy one, be on time. We're in Los Angeles. I'm in Los Angeles, California, and nobody's on time. But I try and be on time. But, Boston, New York, we were on time. I don't know. Are you guys on time in Portland?
There's a
West Coast.
I think there's a West Coast time. But, that was the biggest shock for me moving from New York to California, was that in New York, if somebody said, we're having a dinner party, come to dinner, you'd said yes, you have to go, even if you're on death's door with the flu, you would go, or at the very least call.
Right.
It would be unheard of to just flake. And then in California, everybody I didn't feel like it. I just flaked. It's kind of maddening, but you just get used to it.
Yeah,
and
you get used to it.
Portland suffers a little bit of that too, I think.
But definitely being on time. Again, we've talked about this with the interview, being a few minutes early. But especially if you're having a meeting with your boss, clearly you're going to be on time. And chances are your boss is going to be late. That's okay. It's just the way it works, right? And when you're the boss, you can show up late. But until you're the boss, you got to be on time. And it's just being respectful of other people's time as well, because they are there on time.
I will say the be on time thing, one of the things that I do is when we have meetings, I start them on time. If everybody's not there, then too bad. We start, because if I do the other thing, if I wait for everybody to file in, then they'll know next time that they can be late to each meeting.
Exactly.
But the first time that they walk in late and everything's underway and they've already missed something, then they're not going to be late again.
And I think being on time is important because, let's say you have the best designer in the office, or you have the best CAD person in the office. If they're consistently late, it doesn't matter what their skills are. Nobody's going to put up with that.
It really affects morale throughout everybody, right? So they become known for that. Nobody ever communicates that to them. And then you have this disconnect between the person who thinks they're doing a good job and everybody else resenting them in the office. And that doesn't work.
Totally. All right. So number 5, be on time. All right. What do we have for number 6?
Number 6 is, you're going to laugh at me, but I say this all the time. Everyone is special.
Say that again.
Everyone is special. And you could put special in quotes if you like. But everyone is special. Everybody really wants to feel special, whether they like to admit it or not. So there's a number of ways to interpret this. Number one of your coworkers drives you crazy. You hate their clothes. You hate their habits. You hate how they keep their desk. You hate talking to them. You can let that hate fester and become a problem and disrupt you at work. And you start talking to other of your coworkers about it, or you can just say, you know what? Yeah, they drive me crazy, but there's also good things that they do too. It's really a request to look at the positive. That's one interpretation of the everyone is special mantra. The second one, and this one's a little different, but the second one is that everybody wants to be made to feel special. So when an engineer calls looking for work, hey, you got any projects that we can work on, or a contractor, which happens a lot, or even a sales rep, that you don't make it an opportunity to make yourself feel good about yourself, that you're superior. You don't dismiss them and go, we're busy and we don't need you. You remember that everyone is special, and then you say, okay, well, I don't have time for you right now, but we can schedule time later. You treat them with respect in a certain sense, and this builds on your next one, of course. But everyone really is special. You have to remember, in everyone's own mind, they are the star of their movie called life. And so I spent a lot of time teaching the staff how to make everybody feel special. And it really comes from one book by Dale Carnegie called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it's really, I know it's some people roll their eyes when they hear that, but in truth, that book really changed how I communicate with everybody and had a very positive effect on the outcome of my communication.
Yeah, it is important because we are dealing with other human beings, and it's a skill. I think it's a skill, especially when you have the people in your office that you don't necessarily like, and we're not suggesting that you have to be best friends with them, but I think you're right. Look at sort of the positive sides, because nobody likes the negative, Nelly, and we'll talk about that next. But yeah, I think just treating people with respect, because we've all been there. Whether submitting cover letters or resumes or looking for work and people just, brushing us off, it doesn't feel good, and everybody's sensitive to that. So I like that. Okay, that was number 6. Everyone is special in air quotes. Number 7 is having a positive attitude, which, of our list of 10, there's so many, actually all 10 are really good. It wasn't like we just had 6 good ones and we just found 4. Like, I think all 10 are good. I would say, God, and it's even hard to pick a top one, but for me personally, this would probably be my top one, is a positive attitude. Because if you come in with a positive attitude, it means I can teach you. I don't care if you don't know anything. If you have a positive attitude, you're teachable. And that to an employer is very valuable. If you come in, you have a bunch of skills, but I can't teach you anything, that's no good to me.
Well, not only that, the opposite of that, a negative attitude, is toxic. It will breed throughout the office.
Yeah.
You and I have both had employees that have essentially corrupted the office. They came in and all they wanted to do was complain about me or about the clients and I hate that because it just breeds like a virus throughout the whole office and really changes things. It's amazing how one person can really just transform the whole culture of the office with either positivity or negativity.
Totally.
And we all work in offices that have those people. And I'm thinking right now of somebody who's in our office who we call her Sunshine because she just brightens up everything. She just has the most positive attitude, and it becomes a model for everybody else to follow. And we openly joke about it. Why can't I be more like her? And it's such a different. It makes you excited to come to work. It makes you excited to come to them and ask them questions, and they want to be engaged. And so, even from a political standpoint, having a positive attitude will get you involved in other projects because people will want to include. Let's pull Doucette in on this and see what he has to say.
Yeah, it's you're 100% correct, and I've noticed it just in sort of my outdoor world and all my outdoor activities that I do. And let's say canyoneering, for example, which I do a lot of. We go in groups of like 6 people or 8 people, and you have to have you got to be technically competent, right? So you're not going to rappel off the end of the rope and kill yourself. But more importantly, I find that when we're putting trips together, or I'm invited on other trips, we're looking for people who are fun to do a canyon with. We're looking for people who are positive. We don't want somebody in a group of 6 who's going to complain about everything. Nobody likes complainers because we could all complain. Everybody's got something to complain about. But those of us who have sort of the positive attitude, you don't complain. You're not negative. And right. we all complain a little bit, right? But it's that sort of that constant being just negative. I actually personally have no patience for negative attitude. It just doesn't exist.
I would include in this the the religion, that's probably the best word, that has sprouted up in recent years of the look how busy I am religion.
Right.
The people in the office that go, oh, I'm so busy, and
Yeah.
they say it over and over again as if to tell themselves. And I always have the same response, dude. We're all busy.
We're all busy. Yeah.
Everybody's busy. Whether it's like you got 2 kids, busy. Or, I've got 50 deadlines this week, busy. We're all busy. It doesn't help anything to single yourself out that you're the busiest. Also, to me, as an employee, as a boss, it shows me that, in a certain sense, you're disorganized.
Yeah, exactly.
You haven't managed your time well.
You're overwhelmed.
You're overwhelmed, and you're to be that busy. And you and I have a friend on Facebook. I won't say her name, but but every one of her posts is, oh my God, I'm so busy. I have so many emails. I'm so busy.
Yeah.
And it's like, ugh, shut up already.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear it. We're all busy. But that's a good point, too, of the if you are the type that is saying I'm busy, as an employer, we don't want to hear that because we're all busy. And it also questions me like, well, if you're so busy, then you're overwhelmed. And just like you said, well, you're disorganized. And I'm not going to give you more work. Or I'm not, and then that bleeds into sort of the whole negative attitude. So that was what, number
7.
So that was number 7, having a positive attitude, my favorite on the list. All right, what do we got for number 8?
8 is a tough one, and it's one that I strive for, but it's hard. And it's basically this idea that you would connect ideas together. You could argue that that's what geniuses do. They effortlessly connect big ideas together with each other. But it's an important one. And in architecture, it's very, there's some obvious ones, right? If you're working on a wall detail, well, that connects to waterproofing issues, which connects to budget issues, which connects to scheduling and construction. There's things like that. But what I've noticed with interns, in part because they don't understand how the other parts go, you'll give them a task, they will do that task, and they won't understand how it fits into all the other pieces.
Right.
Go and do the bathroom layout. Okay, now go do an elevation showing the tile layout, and they'll have to revise the bathroom layout because of it. Oh, tiles come in modular sizes. I forgot. Maybe it'll change where I put the partitions in the urinals. Exactly. And there are times when I can't remember to tell you that because you've never done it before or haven't done it enough.
Yeah, that is a tough one. And I guess the idea is, let's say for like if you're giving bathrooms to detail, I guess is just taking a step back and just thinking about how sort of what you are drawing, how it affects other pieces of it. Because it's going to affect the tile, it's going to affect the toilet, it's going to affect the sink, it's going to affect the grab bar. And you're right, the bosses aren't always going to be able to handhold us through that process. And, they're going to want us to figure it out and ask questions to figure it out.
The best experiences I've had is when someone on the team has come to me and said, hey, I found this. Let's continue the bathroom metaphor. Hey, I found this partition that has a smaller mount and it's the same width as our tile. And it's like, oh, that's magic.
Right.
Like, wow. And or even better, hey, remember that sales rep that came in a month ago and did that lunch and learn? They showed us that new wall panel. Let's use that in this. They're recalling things.
Right.
So this idea of connecting ideas together is an important one, but also how all the pieces fit. And it's not easy. It takes experience to learn, but I think it's more important to know that ideas need to fit together. So you should be looking for what are those connections that should be out there.
And let's use the bathroom metaphor for an example, as a lot of these other things we were talking about the ability to ask questions, having a positive attitude, not presenting problems, presenting solutions. So let's say we have 2 people. I'm going to give this bathroom detail to this one person. I know they don't really know what they're doing, but they have everything on our checklist. So I want to see what they can do with it, right? And then I have another person who has the experience, and I don't really know what they're going to come back with. The person who has the positive attitude, doesn't really know what to do, goes off, does it, asks me questions, sort of kind of back and forth to refine it, right? And they're always presenting solutions, or hey, can I use this, or what if we use this tile? Like there's an engagement there, right?
Right.
The other guy just goes off, does this whole detail, brings it back to me, and it's done. it's not going to be the way I want. It just isn't. It's just impossible. But he didn't ask me, throughout any of that process. He didn't ask for my feedback or nothing. I would rather work with the person who doesn't know anything, because at the end of the day, I can get more of the result I want, but that's the kind of employee I want, asking questions, being positive, presenting me with stuff, saying, hey, the lunch and learn, that guy that came in last month, let's try that. That's the kind of person we want, right?
Exactly.
So I think the lesson is if you are in a position where you feel like your lack of experience is helping you, don't worry about that. If you can do all the other things on our list, you will be fine, because employers are going to pick up on that. As we talked about in the cover letter and interviewing and all of that episode, it's difficult to find people that fit into a firm. Not everybody is positive. Not everybody is, great. So if you can stand out, you'll stand out.
Yeah, people are weird. I mean, everybody's weird. So
exactly. And employers know that, right? So they're looking for the less weird, I guess, or
Well, this is a good segue to your number 9,
which is, oh my God, yes, number 9, personal hygiene. I cannot overemphasize, and this is not a joke. This is real, right? Because everybody has been in office one time or another, or if you haven't yet, you will be with the person who just has BO. And they have no idea they have BO. And they just come in with BO all the time. I remember this secretary we had working back in Boston years ago. It was a small office. There was like 15 of us. The square footage of the office, it was like the reception, the boss's office, and then a big room. And so she would sit up front, and like she just had the worst breath. Like you could smell all day. She worked there for several months. So as soon as you opened the door into the office this morning, the first thing you smelled was her breath. It was disgusting. Wow. And why my boss at the time didn't say anything, I don't know. But it's just bad. And it starts to affect, it affects you. It affects the environment of the office.
Well, they tease me at the office because I always brush my teeth after work, after lunch.
Right.
And they tease me about it. But I do it because it's like I just had like tuna and onions or something. Like I'm doing it for you, but right. More than anything.
Well, here's just one piece of advice. If you work in a small office, do not bring a tuna fish sandwich into the conference room to eat. Just don't do it. And in fact, I would just lay off tuna. I don't eat tuna fish for lunch, period. It just doesn't happen. I don't know the last time I had tuna fish, but that's beside the point.
We had a guy in architecture school. In my school, everybody had nicknames, right? And so this guy's nickname was Dirty Carl. And Dirty Carl was, he was a buddy of mine. I really liked him, but he earned his nickname Dirty Carl. He walked around the studio barefoot. He was always dirty. He wouldn't shower for days at a time. He was very focused on building his models and stuff. But we always used to joke about how is Dirty Carl ever going to work in an office?
Right.
And I've lost touch with him. I don't know.
I was going to say, where's Dirty Carl today? Probably heading up some division of Gensler somewhere.
He's probably in a tie somewhere, yeah. But he was pretty – he kind of looked like Yosemite Sam. And he didn't really smell as bad as you'd think, but he was dirty. I mean, he was pretty dirty.
And it's like nobody is saying to you, right? Because we all want to be individual. We all want to sort of, express our sort of individualism. So nobody is trying to squash that. It's just you taking a step back and being like, okay, this is the reality of the profession I'm going to be in. This is the career I want to do. I should be hygienic, right. and there's nothing wrong with sort of, Dirty Carl could probably adapt to working in an architecture office. Obviously, he would have to clean up some, but he doesn't have to, Dirty Carl doesn't have to disappear, right? His identity can but he's just, it's having an awareness of presenting yourself,
Well, I remember I went to his wedding.
You did?
And he was in a suit. And it was shocking to see him in a suit. And he had his hair kind of coiffed.
Right.
It's interesting.
Well, and it's also, too, as the employer, if you want to move up the ranks in an architecture firm or you want to advance your career, the reality is you got to be presentable. And as an employer, when you are going to meetings, you are representing the firm. When you're dealing with agencies, you're representing the firm. So they're going to want you. We're not asking for a military clean-cut appearance per se, but you just, you just got to be presentable.
Yeah, and don't clip your fingernails at your desk. That's another one. Do that at home. Okay, number 10.
All right, the final one. Actually, before we do 10, let's do 9 again. So we did number 1, be a good writer. Number 2, don't present problems, present solutions. Number 3, ask questions. Number 4, make everything an opportunity. Number 5, be on time. Number 6, everyone is special. Number 7, have a positive attitude. Number 8, connect ideas together. Number 9, personal hygiene. And number 10 is, drum roll, please.
Number 10 is ties in with all the others. And number 10 for me is no surprises. That means that your job is to communicate. Even the bad news, you need to communicate. There's always going to be bad news. I don't want any surprises. I don't want to walk into a meeting and find out that, the contractor emailed you about this, and it's the first time I'm hearing about it.
Right. I
don't want to be caught off guard ever.
As the employer is what you're saying. Yeah.
You're talking to people. I'm talking to people. We need to get our facts straight. And so you need to communicate. No surprises, and that means the bad news. But for interns, often they're afraid. They only want to show you how great they are.
Right.
So they won't tell you the bad stuff.
Right.
And you find out the hard way. And that makes it so much worse.
It's so much worse, and that's a great point, because if I'm an intern or I have a couple of years of experience in a firm, I need to realize that my boss, my employer, has a bunch of stuff he or she is dealing with, has a bunch of projects that he or she is dealing with. Chances are not involved in the day-to-day on any one project, and specifically, let's say, the project I'm working on. So they don't know everything that's going on. So they're relying on their staff to tell them. So let's say we go to a meeting with the contractor and the owner, and subs are there, and our subs are there. And if something comes up where somebody presents a problem and they're looking at me for an answer, and this is the first time I'm hearing it, I'm going to be pissed at my staff. And this has happened before, and I've probably been on the flip side of it where I was the employee and I didn't communicate enough to my boss. It's embarrassing for everybody. Nothing good is gonna come out of that. So I think you're right. Don't be afraid to spill the bad news, because they're gonna find out sooner or later. It's better they find out now before they're sort of in front of, especially the owner.
Well, not only that, there are things that you may think are bad news, but your principal probably won't bat an eye at.
That's true.
And I remember I was 23 years old. I was working in New York, and the contractor was threatening to put a lien on the project because somebody wasn't performing. I didn't even know what a lien was.
Right.
And I went to Beverly, my boss, and said, I looked it up, and again, I didn't come with problems. I came with solutions. So I looked up what a lien was.
Right.
And I said, oh, there's bad news. He's threatening to put a lien on it. He's like, and her response is priceless. She's like, good.
Right.
It was, good. Let's get those engineers to do. Like, I forget the context of it, but
right, what you thought was a huge deal to them, it's just nothing. Which it's important for us to realize as interns, because the employers are looking at things differently than we do. And I'm sure I've probably lost sleep over sort of details or whatever in my younger days. And then you're exactly right. You present it to your boss, and it's like, oh, okay. Or where you've done something wrong, right? Or you found a mistake you made. Like you forgot to spec the door hardware, and the project just went out to bid.
Right.
Not a big deal. You just handle it in an addendum. And again, the employer expects, knows problems are going to come. So what you would do is you go to the employer and say, hey, we sent out bids to everybody yesterday. I just realized, the door hardware wasn't spec'd. I'm working on an addendum now. I'm going to get it out to all 3 bidders this afternoon. What are they going to be mad at? Nothing. You've handled it,
Yeah. Nothing goes perfectly. Nothing hits every mark. There's always things that we forget. It's a normal part of the process. The process is surprisingly messy. I think movies and TV and even architecture school are to blame for making us think that we're in our ivory tower with this pristine set of drawings, and we hand it over and we're
Right.
done. And it's not like that at all, man.
Not like that at all.
Lots of back and forth.
My biggest thing that I've learned over the years is there's always going to be problems. No matter what, there's always going to be problems. My concern is how are you going to deal with them? And that's what makes great people great is they know how to handle problems. It's the people who don't know how to handle problems, or the people who are too busy, right, to handle problems. Those are the ones who aren't so great. Everybody's got problems. In every business, there's problems. It's how you deal with those problems that's going to make or break you. And I think that's probably one of the most valuable things for an employee too, is just how you deal with problems. And if you are a problem solver, you are going to be a very valuable member to the team, and you're going to make more money.
I don't know if I can guarantee such a thing, but I will guarantee you that if you do these 10 things that we've outlined, you will see a difference in how your coworkers treat you, and how your boss treats you, and how responsibility is handed to you at work. I can't guarantee it, but I guarantee it. Basically, you will see a profound difference, and you're probably doing a lot of these already. I would hope that you're doing 5 of them, but really strive to do all 10. And we'll have the list on the website so you can copy it down. But I think you'll see a radical difference in your performance and how people respond to you at the office.
I think you're right. That's a good point. And I think as well, we could be sitting back, because I've seen this before, where we're not happy in our job. We're not given enough responsibility. We're not we're not working on the good projects, my boss isn't paying attention to me, right? We could certainly be in that rut. We've all been there. Although I don't think I've ever been in there. But the point is, if we are in that situation, then I would say take a look at this list of 10. Start being active with this list of 10. And I think exactly to your point, you will start getting your boss's ear. You will start getting on good projects. It'll happen, but it's kind of like you got to change first. You can't sit back and complain and expect, good projects to just happen. You got to change yourself first, and the good projects will come.
Exactly. Yeah, be honest with yourself too about it.
Exactly. Cool. This was a great one. I got this. There it is.
Thanks for listening to the ARE podcast. Be sure to visit architectexamprep.com and check out our other podcast episodes, video tips, and the ARE blog. Remember to plan